SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
When addiction takes control, getting help can change everything. Parkwood Behavioral Health System offers compassionate, evidence-based addiction treatment for adults right here in Mississippi. Take the first step today. Visit parkwoodbhs.com. Healing starts here. With limited exceptions, physicians are not employees or agents of this facility.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
All right, y'all held the fort down yesterday for me. Was attended a Madison County Business League and Foundation. It's the quarterly economic outlook. And I'm not able to go to all of them because they typically, or sometimes they'll often occur during the time in which we're on the air. Sometimes they're breakfast meetings. This one was a luncheon and a keynote speaker. I wanted to be there to support my fellow artificial intelligence task force member, Dr. Julie Jordan from Mississippi State University. And she gave just a really good talk about artificial intelligence, as she plays a key role in that regard at Mississippi State. She is very smart, and her remarks were spot on and quite interesting and very enjoyable, very insightful, and very informative. So we appreciate that. We're all buckled up, ready to go. We've got Representative Francis Rooney, former United States Representative from Florida's 19th Congressional District, and also a U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See from 2005 and 2008. And Representative Rooney will enlighten us on the President's current foreign policy, dig in a little bit to our relationship with NATO, our allies, the trade tariff situation, the war between Ukraine and Russia, China, Venezuela. A lot of stuff going on, of course, across the globe. And so we'll get some insight there from former Representative Rooney. And then at 12:05, it's Kirsten Baesler, Assistant Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. That is with the United States Department of Education. And Ms. Baesler will discuss the differences that parents and students are experiencing on their going back to school. We're right in the midst of the go back to school season. You can certainly tell that, Rhino, from the traffic all over the place. It was a little muted, of course, during the summer, at least around these parts. I know in many areas of the state, we've got year-round school with the breaks. What do they do? 4 sessions, I think, on a system like that, where they take breaks between those sessions.
I think it depends on the district.
Each district has a different calendar, right? So, but in general, we do have some districts. The one that comes to mind is Corinth, right? I think the Corinth School District is a year-round. Is it Gulfport also that recently converted to all year round school session rather than the traditional calendar of August through May, June, and then off 2.5, 3 months for the so-called summer? It's more consistent with breaks in between the sessions. But you're right, every district can adopt a calendar as it sees fit. So,
yeah, it looks like there's bumping up on 30 districts now.
Oh, really? That have some form of modified calendar that doesn't necessarily align with the traditional.
Everything from Gulfport and Biloxi to Corinth and Lamar County.
Okay.
It says Clinton.
Yeah.
Columbus, Starkville, like Tibbahawk Consolidated, Marion County, just the list goes on and on.
Okay. So different districts are kind of diving into changing up the school year as they see fit. But when they go year-round, they take multiple breaks, right, in between the sessions. So you go to school, take a little break, go to school some more, but it's throughout the year rather than the consistent 9-month or so calendar and then more prolonged 2.5, 3-month break. So, but nonetheless, we've got Miss Baesler on at 12:05 to give us an update from the United States Department of Education. Honored to have someone from the Trump administration calling in today to give us that update. Back to school season underway across most of the country. So the president says that the Strait of Hormuz has been demined. This just out about an hour ago. Demined is, quote, open and operating after 60-day Iran talk window shuts. It just doesn't look like a lot of progress is being made to achieve some sort of resolution to the conflict. You cannot negotiate with people that lie and don't negotiate in good faith and are, I think, frame their negotiations with theocracy, radical theocracy on top of that. And so the president, it's clear he's frustrated with the whole situation. I believe he thought that this thing would be resolved by now. He is saying that the strait is opening, but then you've got officials from the industry, the oil and gas industry, who say not so fast, that the flow of oil is not nearly back to its full capacity at the state it was before the conflict broke out, which is now some 6 months ago. That's what they're saying. In fact, there was a rather disturbing report that I caught over the weekend about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That, of course, a series of caverns along the Gulf Coast, extends from Louisiana into Texas. That's where we store at full capacity about 714 million barrels of oil underneath the surface in these big caverns, salt caverns as they are. It turns out you looked it up for us. I remember one day why it is suitable for this purpose, salt specifically. And there were, I think, questions we had on the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395 about how does that work. And I remember you had it up and you were reading it to us one day. Why do these salt domes turn out to be really well suited for the storage of oil for an extended period of time? And it just turns out they occur naturally underneath the surface in this area along the Gulf Coast, not far from where we are.
And the places they do have to work on it and shape it and change the landscape, you're dealing with salt.
Yeah.
So you can use high-powered, high-pressure water to cut through it instead of having to excavate or mine it with explosives, with rock.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Which is what you might have to do in more traditional oil and gas exploration, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you were digging out a giant cavern underground, it'd be excavations or it'd be mining.
Yeah. So there's concerns about the withdrawal of oil that has occurred many times, and more than some experts say, the salt domes, those underground caverns, can handle. This is fascinating to me. We're sitting at about 243 million barrels. Well, actually, a little bit more than that. We're just under 300 million barrels. First time since the early 1980s, that according to the Department of Energy. So inventories are being depleted as, of course, oil is being released from the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, in response to the disruption in normal supply sources caused by the Iran war. And so it looks like once the depletion that has been ordered is complete, the SPR will sit at around 243 million barrels, and that's well less than half of what the capacity is for the SPR. But the concerns are that, and you get differing opinions on this, Rhino. Some are saying, hey, this thing was really designed to just hold that oil in the rare and unusual situation where you might have to withdraw it. And the experts are saying it's really designed to permit a total withdrawal about 5 times, and that's it. And we've done some 40.
The same way you can carve it with high-pressure water, it erodes much faster if you're moving large amounts of liquid through.
Makes sense. Coming right back from the Element Wealth studio.
When it comes to...
They're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The great Jimi Hendrix with Purple Haze bumping us into this segment. So the bond traders aren't feeling too spunky these days. They are really sounding the alarm about just a number of issues they're concerned about. That
Are they ever truly very excited people?
No. It's their nature to be, I don't want to say pessimistic. Let's just say always looking for a hole. They're always looking for a crutch to drive up the yields, because that's how they make money. I certainly get it. But I will say this. They're pretty dang good about predicting the future of both the domestic and the global economy in the way that they trade bonds. I don't mean they come out and say, here's what we think the economy is going to do. You can tell from how they trade bonds. And one of the things that is a concern are these long-term bonds that are really pushing up to just unthinkable yields, unthinkable from the perspective that it's the highest we've seen in decades. So in particular, 30-year bonds really across the globe, we're seeing not only just 30-year treasuries rose to their highest level since 2007, United States treasuries. French borrowing costs, highest level since 2008. German, highest since 2011. So we're seeing long government bond yields continue to rise. Looking at a chart here from 2016 to present day. What does that mean to you, the average person? Not that our audience is average. They're definitely much above average. But just a person who doesn't keep up with the bond yields. I get it. That's unless you're in that business, you probably wouldn't. But it's an indicator of inflation. So why do bond traders on long-term bonds, such as 30-year term, Why do they want higher yields? Because they say, hey, look, if I'm going to park my money for 30 years, I don't feel good about this inflation thing. I got to get more interest. I got to get a higher rate of interest, thus the yields go up. And there are concerns about just persistent geopolitical turmoil, and that makes economies more vulnerable to supply shocks. And, of course, that causes inflationary pressure. This is a legitimate concern. What I'm about to share is that governments just aren't reining in spending. And that's putting pressure on the fiscal health of countries whose balance sheets keep adding more debt, more liabilities. Then you got changes in market structure. You got demographics. We ain't producing enough people. And there's concern about having new consumers enter the market. So government costs are rising, and this could be an indicator of just concerns about inflation. They just don't feel like that inflation is coming into check. But you've got economists, you know what we say all the time, Rhino, that's why economists have to have two hands, because they'll always make a statement and then follow up with, but on the other hand, so economist Stephen Moore, who we've actually had on this program before, he worked in the president's first term. I caught an interview with him this morning. He's predicting sub 2% inflation by the end of the year. So you got him, a skilled and competent economist with his analysis, his prediction. You got the bond traders with their prediction, which is, no, we think inflation is going to continue to be quite sticky and persistent. So it's kind of a tale of two cities, as the saying goes. But the borrowing rates are certainly going up, and why that's important to every American is because that just means higher debt, more debt lapped on to our current level of debt, because we got to pay more to those who finance our debt and buy these treasuries, 30-year treasuries. So the highest since 2007 in the United States. Meanwhile, the debt clock just ticking away. I just don't see any end in sight on that. Looking at the current level, $39,936,497,500 now 22. Oh, pardon me, 537. It moves so fast. 1,000. So at some point this month, before the calendar flips over to September, it is expected that we will surpass the $40 trillion level. Meanwhile, the Congress, where they run home, right? They're enjoying the August recess while the debt clock just continues to plow forward. I just don't see any end in sight. Really don't. And I know that, and so what does that mean? You know, I've had some people say, ask the question, when does it matter? It kind of matters when it matters. You can't just put your finger on and say, bam, when we get to that level, that's it. That's over. It's over. No, I don't think so. It matters in that it drives inflation. Now, how do you offset that? Keep growing the economy. That's how you offset the additional spending, the additional debt, is through economic growth. You need, as Larry Kudlow on the Business Channel likes to say, you got to have growthier policies. That's what he says. And what are those? Supply side policies? Supply side meaning promoting supply. That's just something that Democrats do not get. They're always focused on, oh, we got to take from this group and give it to that group. Never about, hey, why don't we just expand supply? That means you get the hell out of the way, government. That means business-friendly policy. Policy that is conducive to business investment and expansion and growth. That means fewer regulations, lower taxes. Just the thought of that, it's like kryptonite to Superman. It'd be like putting a crucifix in front of Lucifer himself. They just melt. Oh, my gosh, lower taxes. Can't do that. It's incredible. Meanwhile, in California, by the way, maybe there is hope, Rhino. Have you seen this? They've got a wealth tax on the ballot coming up. That's right, a wealth tax. Meaning we're just going to calculate how much money you got and impose a tax on it if you're over a certain level. Interestingly enough, current polls show that most Californians oppose it by about 7 points. And you'd have to at least consider that what made California so dang wealthy is Silicon Valley to a great extent. Guess who doesn't want this wealth tax? Silicon Valley. They're the ones that get hit the hardest. Now you got,
except for their representation.
Ro Khanna supports it. And he's even said it. Yeah, all the people in my district don't want it, but I'm for it. I'm not exaggerating here whatsoever.
No, him and who was it? Mark Cuban were trading blows over it over the weekend on Twitter.
They sure were. Mark Cuban was trying to explain to him, dude, you keep draining the cash, and that's not good for the companies that I support, where I'm holding stock. You make me sell the stock. That's bad for everybody, is his point. We don't want that. I don't want people liquidating stock to pay taxes. That's insane. But that's what even Cuban, because most of his wealth, as you know, is not held in cash. He's not going to just let it sit around the bank at 3% interest, holding in money market investments. No, he's got to deploy. He's trying to help people. Honestly, he's helping companies. That's the part they don't get. By investing their capital. And they get mad because then they make money off of it. No, it's that investment. It's that access to that capital is what enables these companies to go grow and hire and expand and innovate and solve human problems. I know that's just way over their head. Oh, but he's going to get rich doing it. Right, that's right, because it turns out it benefited lots of people, and that's how you get wealthy. So when the market says, hey, I like what you're selling there. I think I'll have some of it. And you get rich doing it. That concept's lost on him. We're taking a break right here from the Element Wealth Studio. Stay with us.
From the seat.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Yeah, man. So looking at the markets today, the Dow, it's down. Not as severely as the NASDAQ is. It is down 500 points right now. It's been anywhere from down 200 and change to now. This looks like the low of the session. The Dow also triple digits, down 110. NASDAQ now down 350. So, man, it is moving fast. This is largely driven by what we were talking about earlier, and that is the increase in bond yields on the 30 years. So on the NASDAQ, of course, you guys know it, it's tech heavy. And tech stocks generally are considered growth stocks as opposed to value stocks, which are, it's not going to move a whole lot, but it's pretty low risk. Yes, the NASDAQ 100 that's down 500. The NASDAQ overall, the exchange, down 350. So You got the more traditional industries where they don't really move one way or another a lot. Value stocks. Energy would be among them, finance, healthcare, transportation. But then you've got, on the other side of that, you've got the tech-heavy NASDAQ where they are still experiencing significant growth, are the technology issues on the NASDAQ. But what traders are buying is future profits. You guys are going to keep growing. I want to be there, and profits are the mother's milk of stocks. But when you've got inflation being predicted by the bond markets, talking about the yields on the 30-year really spiking here recently, well, then the equity traders in the technology stocks say, well, for me to park my money and make an investment on the basis of your future revenue and profit, this inflation is going to cut into the value of those future profits. The dollar's worth less than it is today. Therefore, I'm not too crazy about investing. And so there's a sell-off, and that's what we got going on right now. Plus, this time of year is always kind of weak for markets between now and October, sort of a witching month, so to speak, Rhino, the late summer doldrums, and then on into September, and then, of course, in October. That usually is just a weak time for equity markets. But, you know, they've had a great run this year. You can't be unhappy with where we are. So having a little pullback here is not unexpected given the rather sharp rise we've seen. So I'm looking at this crazy stuff going on over the weekend that I saw. A Massachusetts mayor, who, by the way, is from the Dominican Republic, city of Lawrence, Massachusetts. He's been arrested for stealing $1 million of COVID relief money. Can this be real in this country? I'm watching a video of him walking about with his aides, his staff, and there's a reporter that looks like from a television station, just looking at the mic. Couple of them, actually, with the number in a sort of a logo on the mic. That's how you typically know it's a television station. And they're attempting to ask this mayor about this situation where he's been arrested for stealing COVID money. And his staff, his aides, intervene and say, he doesn't speak English. What? You're the mayor of a city in the United States, and you don't speak English? This is just incredible. I'm calling horse hockey on that. You're guilty, dude, and you don't want to talk about it. And he's waving to the camera like he's just good old jovial stroll through the streets here of Lawrence, Massachusetts, just ignoring these couple of reporters and his staff. Oh, he doesn't speak English. Good grief. That's a hold my beer moment, isn't it? Just absolutely incredible. The Democratic Socialist of America, by the way, I think they're on the ballot again today. A candidate down in South Florida. It's primary day in Florida. And there's an incumbent representative, Moskowitz, down there. I believe he's Jewish, Rhino, if I'm not mistaken, in a district that's heavily populated with Jews, many of whom, as you know, through the decades have been migrating from the Northeast, New York in particular, and taking up residence in Florida for a lot of different reasons. And he is being challenged by another DSA lunatic. He's been there a while, I believe. Is it Jared Moskowitz, Rhino? He's been there several terms, is he not? And you're looking at that? Yeah, so he's got a significant challenge coming up today from another nutcase member or certainly one who's been endorsed. The Democrat Socialists want you to know they are not a party. They're a movement. They're an organization. They do endorse candidates, but They're not officially styled as a party. So they had a steering committee meeting that leaked. It was on, it looks like one of the web conferencing tools. I can't tell which one. It doesn't matter. And I'm looking at it. And there's a member of the steering committee who says the group is famous for their hatred of the United States Constitution, calls it the, quote, obstacle they must get over to have a revolution. That's where they are. We are in this country. It really is coming down to common sense versus communism. It does feel like it. But we'll see what happens today with this race down in Florida with Jared Moskowitz on the ballot to retain his seat in the United States House. You know, we do have laws in this country, as you know, Rhino, against sedition, inciting violence. We do have laws against that. It is I did research that a bit this weekend. Not surprised. Very high standard of proof. Very high burden of proof, which suggests to me why we don't see a lot of lawsuits coming out. Because it's so subjective. Did what they say, did that really rise to the level of sedition? The Democrats believe that Donald Trump engaged in sedition on January 6th, right? That's what their contention is as to why he broke the law, and that's their grounds for impeachment of him. So it's very difficult to prove. And then the other problem we have is if you're a United States citizen by birth, I want to be clear about that. You clarified that for us last week. Natural birth. And I guess, as far as I know, the only office in the country that requires one to be naturally born is that of the president, right? You don't have to be a naturally born citizen to serve in the United States Congress, for example. Yeah, so you have to be, however, a citizen, but you can be what's called a naturalized citizen. There is some nuance there that I got to tell you, until last week and you and I were talking about it, I was unclear about, honestly. Well, it turns out the Constitution protects on a permanent basis those who are naturally born citizens. Their citizenship is protected. You can't revoke the citizenship of a naturally born citizen. You can of a naturalized citizen. And I looked at that. You know, we got millions of naturalized citizens in this country. But on average, our Department of Justice seeks to revoke the citizenship of about 10 to 12 a year of the millions. I think last year it was like a record at 150, which ain't a lot. And they get caught up in churning the files in courts. I mean, it's not like slam dunk deal, bring them in. Yep, your citizenship's gone. And it may take until they die to finally litigate the case and make a decision, or the courts hand down a decision. But I was shocked to find out that, hey, if you're aligning with a communist organization, supporting that, aligning with, it literally says communist in our law as a naturalized citizen. We can revoke your citizenship. Rhino, if that applied to a natural born citizen, we could revoke the citizenship of at least half the Democrats, could we not? But you can't do anything about it because they're naturally born citizens. And this is where it's important to understand the distinction of, you know, what action can be taken from a legal perspective. We're stepping aside for a break. Final segment, hour one, coming up next from the Element Wealth Studio.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Joey the Trucker says they say it's $1 million that the mayor of Lawrence, Massachusetts stole. It's probably a lot more than that. Yeah, that's probably true, Joey. I just found it just incredible, honestly, that his aides are saying that he can't speak English when being confronted by reporters who want to know more about the story or if he has anything to say about it. You got elected to be the mayor of an American city and you can't speak English. Gotcha. But that's their story, I guess, and they're sticking with it.
I mean, it's really not all that unbelievable when you look at voter turnout.
Well, that's true. That is true. And that
voter turnout being low across the country means that if you have a small town or municipality or village that gets overwhelmed by one demographic group or another, if that demographic group shows up to vote and votes as a unit, voter turnout's how that happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't emphasize it enough how important it is. And I will say that I attended an event in DeSoto County, their annual Reagan Day event. Awesome, as always. And keynote speaker, Representative Trent Kelly from Mississippi's 1st District. And his entire speech, Rhino, really focused on don't take anything for granted. Get out there and vote. And he was very emphatic about it. And I think he knows what he's talking about. I agree. All you have to do is look at the turnout and see how low it is. It seems like it just comes down to who can get their people out. It's not about who can make the best case, to the voters. No, it's about getting your people out to vote for you. And that's the primary factor. Secondary is what kind of candidate are you? That
shouldn't. To the average person, to the non-plugged-in, non-politico, the vast majority of politicians on either side of the aisle are not people worthy of taking the time to go stand in line and vote.
I do think that a lot of people feel that way. I think you're right about that. And that's a shame. And I think to a great extent that's because we have a lot of good people on the sidelines that would be great in public office. And for a variety of reasons, choose not to enter that fray. I do think social media has something to do with that, where everybody's got a chance.
It's exacerbated it.
It's nothing new. I agree with you. But when the mudslinging starts and you get just random people out there on social media just blasting folks for stuff, and then they also...
And that gets amplified by our adversaries.
Totally true, who capitalize on it, attempt to capitalize on it for political purposes. And then they also will attack families, which is kind of a sad deal. So there's been a lot of discussion in the state over the last couple of weeks about the appointment of a judge, a municipal court judge in Benoit, Mississippi, Bolivar County. And there's concerns about the invasion of Islamists in our society overall, not just here in Mississippi, where there's really a tiny fraction of our population, but in the country. You go to places like Dearborn, Michigan, right, Rhino, it's like primarily Muslims and Islamists that occupy that city, which is, of course, headquarters of the great American automobile manufactured Ford Motor Company. It's just crazy, some of the video, the images, and then the folks they elect and send to the Congress. This is where it gets outrageous, this story I'm going to share with you. It's from Palo Alto High School. Palo Alto, around the Silicon Valley, the Bay Area of the country, San Francisco Bay Area. I don't think it's the case anymore, Rhino, but there was a time I recall not too terribly long ago most expensive real estate in the country, Palo Alto, one of the most affluent areas. Get this. It was just learned that they sent their students to a mosque. They push hijabs on girls and handed out Qurans. Students in the school's, quote, social justice pathway took a field trip to a mosque. So a lawsuit has been filed by Jewish, Hindu, and Zoroastrian parents. They claim the girls were encouraged to wear hijabs. Students were given the Quran. Photos of the kids posted online without parents' permission. Exposed to care activist Zara Bilou. I thought public schools were required to stay neutral. Coming right back after Fox News SuperTalk News.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now former United States Representative for Florida's 19th Congressional District. That would be former Rep. Francis Rooney. Served in that role from 2017 to 2021, and then as the United States Ambassador to the Holy See from 2005 and 2008. Representative Rooney, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So we wanted to get you on to give us your perspective on the current situation on the president's foreign policy. Of course, lots of action across the globe, and the United States has got some involvement in one way or another in the various areas of the world. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I know the president's done a lot of really great things, and in many ways I really admire him a great deal. But I don't think the Iran invasion was a very smart move. And I have a fair bit of knowledge about Iran. I used to work over there. I left just before the embassy fell. And they're a very complicated country with a very rough and difficult terrain to try to invade. And it hasn't gone well for us. And we've spent $37 billion, and we're in the same position we were in before we spent a dime.
Yeah, and that's been the complaint. But what do you make of the president who is rather continuously tells the country and honestly the world that we're winning? We've decimated the military. They've got nothing. They're hurting. They're desperate for a deal. But it just seems like every day it just continues and there's no resolution.
Well, the Iranians are very complicated people. A lot of people in the diplomatic world say we play checkers and they play chess. They're very able to nimbly change positions, retract positions, and they keep everybody kind of unsettled. And they're doing that to the president right now.
Yeah. They don't seem to negotiate in good faith. It's clear that frustrates the president, but that's kind of ingrained in their style and their culture, is it not, Representative Rooney? That, it's perfectly fine to lie here and be deceptive and duplicitous as long as it advances our goal.
Yeah, but again, sometimes I think the president looks at these foreign policy negotiations like a real estate deal, and it's a different situation than good faith negotiating over buying a hotel or something. And these guys have their strong motivations, self-preservation motivations. The IRGC is running the country, the hardcore radicals. And my personal feeling about Iran is if we will be patient, ultimately the people of Iran are going to get done with those guys.
Yeah.
You know that before we cut their budget, the former Radio Free Europe, which is called the Agency for Global Media, had 20% market share broadcasting Farsi into Iran.
Wow. So, has that not been used in the past? I mean, didn't we have something called, I think, the Reagan Doctrine, where it was about trying to work sort of in a subversive manner to motivate, encourage, promote maybe internal change, internal overthrow of a dictatorial regime?
That's in my line of work and history and understanding of things, that's a much better practice than the full-on frontal assault. We've been very successful, even in Iran back in the 50s, with taking out Mossadegh. And certainly in many places in Central and South America, we've been very successful operating behind the scenes and clandestinely. Look how well Venezuela went. That was a flawless operation.
Yeah. So, your personal opinion, Representative Rooney, do you think it's possible for us to extract and obtain the enriched nuclear material inside Iran without launching an all-out ground invasion?
Be very difficult. I don't know how we would ever get them to give them to us if we send a bunch of troops in there and get it.
Well, is that to be considered kind of the primary objective? That's what the president said, right? And I agree with him. We don't want a nuclear Iran. We want to denuclearize them and ensure they never have that ability. I'm just concerned that we're not going to achieve that objective without boots on the ground, and that's not very popular in this country.
No, it's not. And see, if you look at it the other way, and if we were to destabilize the government working within and working clandestinely, then it would fortify the people who really don't agree with the Revolutionary Guards anyway.
Right.
And if we got a decent regime in Iran, which didn't continue to say things like death to Israel and death to the United States and all this ridiculous things they say, we wouldn't have to fear their nukes as bad. It'd be put them in the category of, say, Pakistan.
Yeah. Yeah, so
we don't like that they have nukes, but we don't have to fear them because they're not threatening us.
And maybe that ends up being the resolution here, that there's just a change in government control, such as your point about Pakistan, where I don't think we stay too concerned about them launching nuclear weapons on the Western world. But Iran is
they let us fly over Pakistan to go bomb out Azerbaijan and hunt down bin Laden.
Yeah, that's true. It's good points. But I guess the question is, there are tens of millions of Iranian civilians who are suffering significantly because of this war. Why don't they organize and overthrow, Representative Rooney, this regime that's in charge?
Well, I hope they do, but, you can never overestimate the ability of a repressive regime to harm its people. They don't care about their people. And we've seen it in many other countries the same way. They care about self-preservation. You would think that sooner or later the people would rise up. They tried to do that under Obama. They had the so-called Green Revolution, but he didn't back them up. Yeah. He had a great opportunity to strike a blow for freedom in Iran, and he didn't do it.
Does it not come down to whom the military it reports to and whom they take orders from? I just wonder that the civilians feel threatened and they feel that they're at risk if they were to rise up and protest that the regime would order the military on them.
Well, prior to the past Ayatollah dying, the Ayatollah was kind of the head guy. But I kind of get the feeling now, and I haven't seen any classified or any information on this, but I have a feeling now that the Revolutionary Guard is pretty much calling the shots.
Okay.
And they're pretty repressive, and the people are probably pretty scared of them.
And that's kind of the my perception of the whole thing. But it seems like they would also understand that it's their people, it's their countrymen that are being harmed here, that are suffering, that they would maybe see fit to use a different approach.
Well, not only are they a repressive, abusive regime who doesn't value life, but they come from a region of the world and a religion that values life in a different way than we do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not the Judeo-Christian ethic, that's for sure.
And that just complicates any sort of negotiation and détente, does it not?
It does, absolutely. And you got to know what you've got with your enemy so you can try to figure out how best to deal with him. And sometimes we just act like we have blinders on.
Yeah,
here the president's attacking the Sunni Arab allies that we have, like Oman, when what we really need to do is build them up to fight the Shiite regime like in Iran and Syria.
Yeah, he issued a pretty stern warning, said if you interfere, he was going to bomb them severely.
Yeah, which I don't see him doing. I do not see the president bombing Oman.
Yeah, it wouldn't seem likely at this point. Just seems like as long as that guard is kind of aligning with the radical regime, that it's going to be very difficult for even the millions of civilians that aren't in the military to cause any change.
Yeah, it will. They are a very militarized state with a very strong central military junta running the country, and it will. But all things change. There will be something happen there. It won't be this way forever.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that there is a resolution in the not too distant future, because it's certainly it's having political ramifications, as you know, besides just causing other economic problems and the like, not to mention the loss of life and just injury to people.
Yeah, but it didn't have to have any of those ramifications if Trump would have just concentrated on our economy, our people, and not worry about Iran.
Representative Francis Rooney has been our guest here, former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Appreciate you coming on, Representative Rooney. Enjoyed your insight.
Thanks for having me on.
You get it. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hi, I'm Bradley.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back. It's middays from the Element Wealth studio. Jason Starkville says, I think he's talking about the president here. He says that right after he buys calls on stocks. There's certainly been some criticism of the president kind of timing some of his trading transactions along with announcements. There's no doubt that when the president speaks and talks about something that is such a huge factor in investments in markets, that if he does any trading around that same time, he's subject to being criticized. I haven't really looked at that. I haven't looked at his trades and seen anything but just left-wing media that's protested it and been very critical of the president's improvement in his balance sheet and his financial condition. I think he's now selling his Truth Social posts. You seen that, Rhino? Ahead of the actual posting, you can buy a Truth Social post. So, and I mean, it's possible that could move markets. It does. A Truth Social post could. And I'm pretty sure that now the president is charging for that early. If you want an early access to his post, you can obtain that with $100,000 per month investment. That's That's at least what's being reported. I've caught it in numerous news sources. I haven't seen it really be just blasted as headline information. But this is interesting. You can actually, and the president does own 41% of the Truth Social platform, but you can get those posts before he releases them, I guess, by subscribing to that service that would provide the posts before he makes them public for $100,000 a month. Man, that's something. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. This just broke in the last day or so.
I mean, he's being sued over it.
Who's suing him?
I don't remember exactly who. I remember it was reported as media groups.
Okay.
Let's see here. It was in this article. Freedom of the Press Foundation. The chief of advocacy, Seth Stern, says, quote, "It's so blatantly corrupt and unconstitutional that it would have been hard to even fathom just a few years ago," end quote.
I'm not really sure if that's unconstitutional. I'd have to think about that. What provision of the Constitution do you suspect that might violate? Not sure. If there's anything explicit in the Constitution, I mean, certainly there's nothing in there about social media platforms, but I guess you could just say, look, if a president or any, I guess, elected official engages in the selling of information, because that's really what this is. This is selling official communication. I guess it'd be official communication because it comes out of his keyboard. I'm not sure it's official as that. It's his personal, right? It's not White House official communication. So I'm not sure. That's probably where it gets complicated, honestly. It's him just engaging in his First Amendment rights to say things as an American citizen that's separate from official communication from the White House, from the government. And that maybe is what got folks all upset. Because what he says on Truth Social is not binding. It's just him like anybody else using social media, just publishing statements, images, video, etc., all sorts of content that social media permits dissemination of. So it'd be hard to understand how that might violate any law. Now, if it were coming from the White House, the official White House account, official information that's logged and registered in the documents and whatever the repository is where all that stuff is stored. I don't know what that is exactly, but the record of official communication from government, yeah, I can see where that would be a problem. But his personal posts, I don't know. Seem like that's a stretch. Certainly, there's enrollment of everything that comes from the White House, of its official record. In the state, that would be the Secretary of State, right? Responsible for, as laws are passed, orders are issued, that would be the Secretary of State. I suspect that's the same at the federal level. I haven't really ever researched that, but somewhere in some organization, they're logging all that stuff. They're capturing it. They're recording it, and it's official, and it's forever. But a social media platform just happens to be the one that's used by the president. I don't think that rises to that level. So we'll see. But, of course, there's always lawsuit shoppers, right? No matter what.
I wonder if any of the lawsuit shoppers are going to go after Median Strategies.
What are they doing?
Median Strategies put out a statement yesterday afternoon. Quote, "Median Strategies polling discontinued. Median Strategies has concluded its polling project and will not publish additional polls. All previously published polling releases have been withdrawn and should not be cited or treated as genuine polling data." Median Strategies was created as a short-term social experiment examining how purported polling information could enter and spread through the political information ecosystem without independent verification. Thank you for your understanding.
Okay.
The Median Strategies polling organization was the polling organization that had Karen Bass up by double-digit points. Had Francesca Hong with like a 20-something point lead over David Crowley in Wisconsin.
Right, for governor last week.
And a lot of internet sleuths are connecting dots and pointing to the fact that this looks an awful lot like market manipulation and not so much as a social experiment.
Oh, okay.
Because there was a lot of money in the prediction markets for certain elections, and it seems like all of those elections were polled by Median Strategies.
Interesting. Well, that may explain why the polls did not align with the actual outcomes. In a big way, not a little way, a significant. Up by 20 points to lose.
I mean, when we were talking about Francesca Hong, we were talking about how polling has some at double digits all the way up to 20%.
Yeah.
That was the outlier that Median Strategies was putting out into the ecosystem to hopefully manipulate the markets, seemingly.
Interesting. Well, yeah, that seems like there would be something that's unlawful about that. Yeah, I would agree. Incredible. But this is interesting that the president, I don't know if he's got any takers yet of anyone who wants.
Oh, yeah, I think there's like 10, 12 companies that are paying for early access.
$100,000 a month. I got that. That's what you saw, right?
Yeah, I saw different reporting between 60 and 100,000.
But a month. It's a subscription. Yeah. It's not a one-time deal, not an annual deal. It's per month. But
it's oddly similar to how you have subscriptions on streaming platforms, or you have subscriptions through Patreon for creators and stuff like that.
Makes sense. But you can
usually those are like, pay me $5 a month and you get early access to this a month early.
Given the fact that his communications on social media can move markets and can just impact business activity, economic activity in general, you can see where there would be benefit to knowing that information beforehand and maybe taking some action before it becomes public. I think that's the goal. Can't imagine there would be any other reason an organization would be willing to invest $100,000 a month to have access to the president's social media posts before they become public. Interesting. But that's a distinction between, again, his personal accounts here and the official communications coming from the White House, which are registered and logged in the various government facilities that do that, and the government organizations that do that. Totally different.
Is it against the law to pay to play to go talk to Benny Thompson?
No, it's expected. Benny Thompson. That's how the man operates. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabird. Get on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Jackson Brown bumping us into this segment. Yeah, so interesting discovery with the water level receding on the Danube. You know, there's some sunken ships there from World War II. Turns out that the water levels have dropped so low because of the drought that, of course, they're able to see these dozens, is what's being reported, dozens of World War II German battleships. They're coming into view. Guess what else is coming into view? Bodies of Nazi soldiers. That is bizarre. Bodies of Nazi soldiers are emerging in the Danube, and I guess that would stand to reason. And I'm looking at, Rhino, a photo of a recovered Nazi motorcycle from World War II. It's just fascinating. I mean, these are relics of history, big time, that I guess nobody was going to go dig it up and pull it out.
I mean, the Allied forces were invading and pushed the Nazis to the Danube, and that's why you have so many scuttled Nazi watercraft, was because they were in retreat. So, I mean, you was literally a fighting retreat to the Danube and across the Danube, so that's why you have so much stuff there.
That's incredible. So, the motorcycles, by the way, I'm not sure I could pronounce it. Wehrmacht? Wehrmacht?
Wehrmacht.
Wehrmacht? Okay. Could go either way when you got...
Wehrmacht.
Gotcha.
If you want to get real German with it.
Combination of letters. So it's what I'm looking at, a Wehrmacht motorcycle, a wedding ring, and I don't know if it's Cuban or Kuban. It's a Kuban shield. That's a combat badge of the Wehrmacht. Yeah. In the German, pronunciation. So this, according to the German War Graves Commission. It's just totally fascinating. It's not clear whether or not the War Graves Commission is going to release photos of the two Nazi soldiers. That's certainly understandable. They've got the identification tags, though, the ID of the soldiers. They say, quote, they are remarkably well preserved due to the mixture of harbor sludge and oil found on the river bed. That, according to the German War Graves Commission. That's just incredible.
They also had to bring in the bomb squad to blow up an unexploded World War II mine that had buried itself.
Good grief. That's unbelievable. So this is kind of fascinating. All the result of the drought, severe drought being experienced in Europe and certainly around there. But it is surreal to think about. It's been that long, and we've never seen the water this low, such that this could even occur, be a story, be a thing. That just was fascinating. Thinking about that history just at the bottom of the river there, and now all of a sudden in view, including, I mean, this motorcycle looks like with a little work it might be. How is it that the rubber tires are not rotted out and just disintegrated? They're still intact here looking at them. Maybe because of the conditions under the water, I guess, that preserved them. I mean, it's rusted out, but you can see the headlight. The headlight looks like if you put a battery on it, it shine light. It's just totally fascinating.
That's a whole field of study in science, is the preservation of materials by deposition.
Okay. Well, this will give them plenty to talk about, I'm sure, for a long time. And then you wonder how many more remnants of human remains and bodies that are going to be excavated and studied, and just unbelievable. Totally incredible. And, you know, I don't think a lot about the Danube River. You know, you don't think about that. Of course, we weren't around during that period, and most of what images we see of it are movies. Unless you're big time into studying and reading about World War II. And, yeah, there are plenty of actual photos, of course. A little bit of film. It's kind of hard to find, but you don't think about the river's role in the war, which evidently was significant when you talk about battleships. I'm a little surprised that a battleship could float down the Danube, this deep river, I guess. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a big draw on battleships. I'm not sure how many rivers in this country a battleship.
Well, I mean, you've got to think about European history and especially the history of trade in Europe. A large portion of trade in Europe was due to their river system and their ability to move goods farther inland with large ships. So, I mean, you would imagine if they were building a battleship for a European navy, they would take into account the size and shape of European rivers.
Makes sense. That's the waterways that they will navigate, so you'd consider that in the design. Sure, it's where they're going to operate.
Similar to how oil tankers are designed based on the dimensions of the Panama Canal.
Sure.
So they can fit through it.
Makes total sense.
Because at current technological levels, they can make supertankers, and they do make supertankers that are much too big to fit in the Panama Canal. They're just not canal rated.
Okay.
They don't come through the canal. They go to different ports.
I'll just say that typically when you either see an image or video of a battleship and you think about a battleship, you think about them on the high seas, not a river. And so that's fascinating to me, but that makes sense.
I'm trying to remember which one it was that was the German battle. It might have been the Bismarck. That one of the early actions of the war was they just pulled up in the river and started blasting.
Incredible. Unbelievable. Well, this probably hear more about this, I suspect, as long as the water level stays low and more artifacts and human remains become into view. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see more about that. Shifting gears a little bit, I can't remember if we talked about this on the air or in the break, and I think it was on the air. It's Nike experiencing a big old slump in its stock, and they are attributing that to poor guidance. They don't have a very good feeling, their management, about future sales and profits of the company, but they maintain that's largely being driven by the decline in the Chinese market for them. I guess you don't think about how big a market that is for the athletic shoemaker, Nike. But, that's exactly what they're saying is they're worried about because the economy in China is down. And they also said that there's a lot of competition in China, that there are companies in China, Chinese-based companies, that are starting to cut into their market. So kind of an all-the-above thing that they're worried about. They say that
no, you manufacture something in China and China steals it and makes it for cheaper?
Correct. They say that their major sportswear and Jordan, I forget about that, having their Michael Jordan lines. They said that negative sales trends are expected to persist through 2027. So they're trying to revive the brand somewhat. I would also say, Rhino, there's like a million choices for shoes, athletic footwear in particular. And, of course, they make a lot of other athletic clothing as well. Shoes is kind of what they're known for. It's how they started.
Because with the advent of cheap Chinese manufacturing, the barriers to entry are much lower than they ever were.
True. Come up with a good design and have it made in China, right, by low-cost labor. So
you can have thousands of shoes manufactured for what it would have cost to have prototyped a generation ago.
That is absolutely true, and that has been talked about by the manufacturers. Now, are we likely to see a reshoring of some of that manufacturing? That's kind of low-tech manufacturing, if you will, over here. I would argue only if it can be automated and would not be labor-intensive. If you got to deal with the expensive labor in this country, you'd have $500 shoes and nobody'd buy them. I think it's the problem. But
well, they're already $500 now.
Well, that's true. That's with the cheap labor, right? We're going to step aside for a break. We got another segment in this hour. It's Kirsten Baesler, Assistant Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education for the U.S. Department of Education at 12:05.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
$14.25 and $14.98. I throw the rock and roll party on my last birthday, but it's good. I'm rocking my life away. I've been moving and I'm grooving and I'm getting broke night and day. I got a gal.
So, Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina. That would be outgoing Representative Nancy Mace. She ran for governor, right? And didn't do too well in the primary. Put out in the primary in the state of South Carolina. She's 48 years old. She just recorded a promotional video for her new program, Get Maced. So one of the things that the folks are noticing, I think this was intentional, man, she's tattooed up. You seen those arms? Absolutely filled with tattoos. She kept those really out of public view, I would say, during her time in Congress. I certainly wasn't aware of this. Don't recall ever seeing any images of her exposing her arms that are covered up with tattoos. She told Politico in February that she had gotten 9 tattoos in rapid succession between 23 and 24. That time period included the collapse of her engagement. She was, I remember that, engaged to be married, and then had an exodus of a bunch of staff from her office. And didn't we cover a story, Rhino, about her getting very indignant with some security folks at an airport or something? Remember that? She was demanding, I need to go to the front of the line. I'm a U.S. Congresswoman. That's exactly what people hate about these rules for thee and not for me, politicos. And I've said many times, it's not the money that attracts them. It's the trappings. It's the spoils. It's the preferential treatment, such as going to an airport and just simply saying, I'm a member of Congress here, you got to put me in the front of the line. That really aggravates people. So just looking at her arms here with a bunch of tattoos, this just kind of marks another unconventional chapter. Who is for someone who served in Congress that's been a bit unconventional, somewhat of an outsider. She has described herself as a caucus of one and really hasn't caucused with anybody, honestly. She's been very independent. I kind of like that. I think that's fine. But this is interesting that she now has taken the sleeves off and is exposing her tatted up arms. Ain't that something? Here at home, the governor yesterday, Governor Tate Reeves, appointed Amanda James Tollison to the Mississippi Supreme Court. There was a seat that was vacated, and so that was vacated by Justice James Maxwell. He was confirmed to the United States District Court for the Northern District, nominated by the president to fill that post. So it looks like that the governor has selected Ms. Tollison to serve on the state's highest court. He said, quote, her extensive legal experience, knowledge of Mississippi's legal system, and long-standing commitment to public service make her exceptionally qualified for the bench. She's been a partner at Butler Snow since 2012, served as legal counsel to former Governor Haley Barbour. And before that, she practiced law at Bradley, Arent, Rose, and White, and also at Phelps Dunbar. So, congratulations to Amanda James Tollison for being selected by, she lives in Oxford, being selected by Governor Tate Reeves to serve on the state's highest court. There's an article in the Washington Post that caught my attention. It's about a young Cuban American who is selling democratic socialism door to door across Miami, and that's in this race we were talking about earlier, Rhino, that's being contested today, primary. There's a Democrat socialist on the ballot that is challenging incumbent Jared Moskowitz. The challenger, Oliver Larkin, a self-identified DSA member. But this individual that is going door to door for Oliver Larkin, the Democrat socialist candidate that's going after the post currently held by Representative Jared Moskowitz, is running into a little bit of resistance because many of the doors he's knocking on are in residences occupied by people who came to this country fleeing socialism and communism. Talk about not knowing your audience. This is going to be a fascinating race that I think is really the DSA's sort of last hope in the primaries, right? We're coming right back after Fox News SuperTalk News with Kirsten Baesler from the Department of Education. Stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year, I hope she holds on.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3 of Middays. We are live from the Element Wealth Studio, the afternoon portion, now with you. We're pleased to welcome now Kirsten Baesler, Assistant Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education with the U.S. Department of Education. Kirsten, good to see you, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's very, very nice to be with you today. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. We are honored that you joined us. So it's back to school. We were just talking about that earlier on our program. As you well know, we've got lots of school districts across the country, including here in the state of Mississippi, that have adopted a year-round school calendar. But many still, we have 140 school districts, I believe, last count, about 30 have adopted the year-round calendar schedule. But many are going back to school, and here they've been in school for a couple of weeks. But all that to say, what's changed under the Trump administration with respect to public education in particular?
Sure, that is very interesting. I did not know that some of your school districts had adopted that year-round school calendar.
Yeah.
We could have a whole conversation about that. Way back, almost 15, 20 years ago, when I was the president of a school board in my home state, we had that on the docket as one of the things that we could consider. So it's been around for a while, but I think that point that you just brought up just really exemplifies what has changed under this administration. The fact that the good ideas that are coming out of states, the good ideas that we're hearing about in education, they're not coming from D.C., they're not coming from the U.S. Department of Education, they're coming from states, and they're coming from communities that know their students, that know their families, that know their communities' needs better than I ever could sitting here in Washington, D.C., or anyone could. And so I think for far too long, the most significant difference that you're going to see from this administration is just simply put, for far too long, our K-12 and higher education system has been in the business of serving adults and the bureaucracy that makes them feel comfortable instead of serving the children that we are created and funded to serve, and that is the only reason we exist. And so this is I've spent over almost 4 decades in education, and I've seen that time and time again as a state leader, I had worked under 3 different administrations, and so often I saw when an administration would come into office in D.C., they would suddenly tell states what we were supposed to be doing and give us the direction of how we were supposed to be spending our money. And it's a completely different approach. It's a completely opposite approach than what we're doing. We are asking states to set their own priorities, their own needs, and then we're here to support them. Congress has appropriated funding, and we're here to ensure that we are supporting states in achieving the goals that they have identified as their priorities.
No, I appreciate that. And I think I can accurately represent the sentiment of Mississippians in that we certainly understand that, like all the states, we receive a fair amount of money for public education from the federal government. That's, last I checked, about 25% of K through 12 funding in the state of Mississippi. Of course, state funding, local funding, and then federal funding, the 3 major sources of revenue to operate school districts, school system. But the concern, Kirsten, always is, well, when we get that federal money, we're beholden to whatever policies and regulations and rules they want to hand down, and therefore we lose our autonomy in operating our education system.
And that is so unfortunate. I felt that way under certain administrations as well. Again, I was first elected to my state office as the state education leader under a Democrat administration, and then had 4 beautiful years with Trump 1, and was feeling a lot more flexibility and autonomy. And then again had to kind of suffer through 4 years of another Democratic administration under President Biden, where they were being very prescriptive about what we were supposed to be doing with these purse strings, these federal purse strings hanging over our head. But, we see this so differently. So it's so clear to us. The federal government does have a role. Yes, they have a role. They have a role for the federal funding of accountability for the results of our students, and transparency for how school districts are spending taxpayer dollars. Because that, every dollar that goes to them comes from somebody's pocket, from my pocket or your pocket or my own kids' pocket. So we have to have that responsibility of the transparency for student results and transparencies for taxpayer dollars. But that's the only role that the federal government should play. States need to set their priorities. What are their greatest needs? What do the communities in their state need? Where are students successful and we need to continue support, but where are they struggling? And what do we need to do differently? States have that responsibility and that privilege of setting those goals. Then, of course, local school districts, we call them districts, and some of them call them jurisdictions or divisions. But those LEAs, those local education agencies, they then are tasked with making the decisions about how to implement the instructional and teaching strategies in order to achieve the goal that the state has had. And as you said, the compliance, that weighs heavy over a lot of people's heads. And I will tell you that under different administrations, that heavy hand is more visible than in some, and this one, it is not. We have said clearly that too often success has been defined by the federal government as simple compliance with the law and the requirements that are made. But that's not the reason school systems exist, and it's not the reason hard-working U.S. citizens fund the system. It is to ensure that our students are learning and are successful, and states are in a much, much better position to identify that, to monitor that, and make changes when necessary.
You started out by making the comment that I think really resonates with a lot of people across the state of Mississippi, which is that the kids aren't the problem, it's the adults. And it's especially, got to tell you, it's especially these labor unions, these teachers unions that seem to be all about whatever's in the best interest of the unions and not the parents and the kids.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I've seen that over now almost 4 decades of being in education. And over the course of that career, I came up with 2 things that are firmly embedded in the way that we go about leading and making decisions. The first is student outcomes won't change. They will never change until adult behaviors change. And the second is when big people fight, little people suffer. And it really does seem that our unions, they have a purpose. They serve a purpose. They are there to represent adults. But let's not let them confuse the message that they are serving students and that they are the caregivers or the only people in the room that care about their children's outcomes. That's not the role that they serve, and they are very interested in fighting. And when big people fight, little people suffer. But that's not their concern. That's why it needs to be our concern. As leaders in education, we truly need to be concerned about how our students, are they reading? Are they writing? Are they doing math well? Are they understanding what a privilege and how important it is to become a contributing U.S. citizen, whether it's in their local community or their state or even on a federal level? So really important things that we're tasked of doing in education, and it should all be rooted in asking the question of how are our children doing? No other question.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's talk for a minute about the Education Freedom Tax Credit Program that enacted last year. Our state has adopted that. It's at the discretion of the states. There's still a few that haven't done so. Scholarship granting organizations, SGOs, would receive the money. A person could donate money to those SGOs. You get a federal tax credit up to $1,700 for doing that. Then the SGO then distributes that out to those who apply and are qualified so they can use it as they see fit. How's the program going? I just want to give our audience a little baseline for what the program is. How's that going?
George, thank you so much. It's going well. It will officially launch in January of 2027. You as a taxpayer, I as a taxpayer will be able to find a scholarship granting organization, and instead of cutting a check or a bigger check to the federal government, we can donate to an organization that's going to give that same money, dollar for dollar, to a student to either pay for tuition or even a public school student that maybe wants to take a career and technical education course and is struggling to find the money for the welding equipment that he or she might need. So both public and private school students are going to be able to benefit from this. Taxpayers will be able to choose where they want their money to go. The Treasury is about to release the guidance and the regulatory rules, so that those will be expected in September. Sometime in September is when Treasury said they would come out with those. But we're telling people, don't wait. As Mississippi did, your state, your governor opted in early, and that allowed and signaled to all of the organizations within your Great Magnolia state that they could suddenly begin to look to stand up a scholarship granting organization. And so we are encouraging everyone to be ready, be prepared, because when January 2027 rolls around, people are going to be looking for SGOs. Again, we started this conversation about what's going to be different this school year than it has been under, previous years. I think it really is that, number one, we talked about states having more flexibility and more freedom to do what they need to do. But now families will have so many more choices on how they want their child's education to look and feel and what the experience is. And what it all boils down to is students will have more opportunity. And that's our North Star.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the president's a big proponent of that as well, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. Kirsten Baesler, U.S. Department of Education. Appreciate you coming on, Kirsten. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for what you do. Take care.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
John Ravenstein.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. You can call 601-957-6006 or go to myelementwealth.com to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. The president's net worth, we were talking about it earlier, it's grown by nearly $4 billion Forbes estimates his net worth to be $6.4 billion. That's up over $4 billion from their estimate of $2.3 billion in 2024. So here's what I'll say, though. His is more legitimate. I mean, it's through his various business interests, real estate, golf ventures, etc. He has made a bunch of money in the crypto market. You know that. He's done pretty well at that. What bothers me are these politicians like Biden and Obama. They basically just made their money off their fame and serving as a president. And they just parlayed that into personal fortunes. Didn't really produce anything for society, in my view. This just out, Rhino, ESPN founder Bill Rasmussen has passed away at 93 years old. ESPN founder Bill Rasmussen, 1979. I have to say, I was watching TV back then. I remember it well. It really was neat, the idea that you could watch sports 24 hours a day. And you'd have some really boring, crazy stuff, in the off-peak hours. But just
I don't know about boring now.
Okay, well,
those World's Strongest Men competitions where you could tell they were obviously from 20, 30 years before then.
Yeah, I guess so. You're right. You have to admit, it's pretty innovative.
You got some dude named Magnus von Magnuson throwing a piano filled with molten lead in a 7-story window multiple times.
That's true. Because they used to do...
or the lumberjack game.
That's what I was about to say. I remember that.
Some old dude in overalls against some young whippersnapper in flannel doing the log roll.
I didn't even know that was a thing until I caught it on ESPN. Yeah.
Every once in a while they bring out the oddball sports again. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a whole live stream channel on a lot of the streaming platforms, the free with ad streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Where the only ESPN you can find on there is ESPN The Ocho, which is an old joke from a movie called Basketball. But on The Ocho, you've got cornhole, you've got the lumberjack games, you got World's Strongest Man, you got darts, you got all kind of oddball sports constantly being broadcast.
Well, you got to do something.
Professional Foursquare.
That's right, to fill up 24 hours, right? And you didn't, in 1979, we didn't have all the technology to do all these live broadcasts the way they do now on ESPN of all kinds of sporting events. He was the Whalers communications director. That's initially in his career. Of course, this launched in Bristol, Connecticut, I believe, ESPN. He maxed out his credit card and used the $9,000 advance he received on his card to acquire, quote, valuable space on a communications satellite. That, according to ESPN, that is just fascinating and just such a great example of an American entrepreneur, an innovator, a visionary who was just bound and determined to see his idea come to fruition. So that led to the creation of the first round-the-clock sports network on September the 7th, 1979. Served as the company's first president and CEO. Now, he left the company a few years after that, but he's the one that set the wheels in motion for Monday Night Football to be aired on the network. Prior to that, of course, I remember vividly as a kid. Looked so forward to Monday Night Football on ABC because you had NBC, CBS carried the Sunday football. As I recall, one had the AFC, one had the NFC, and then ABC, their play in professional football, NFL football, was Monday Night Football. And who could forget Frank Gifford Dandy Don, Howard Cosell. It was entertaining. Just those guys calling the games were so great.
Yeah, because the guy that sounded drunk was stone sober, and the guy that sounded sober was drunk as a skunk.
That's exactly right. Tell the folks about that. That is completely accurate there.
I mean, that was technically before my time, but I've watched videos, heard audio clips, and seen plenty of editorials on the fact that Giffords was a different animal.
Yep.
Off the air.
Yep. Heard the same thing. Married, of course, to the famous Kathy Lee Gifford. What was the name of the show she was on with Regis Philbin? Can't even remember. Daytime or I don't remember. An ABC
Everybody
show?
just called it Regis and Kathy Lee.
Maybe that's what it was. I thought it was something different.
I think it had a different name, yeah. But it didn't go by it.
Yeah, somebody on the text line will probably let us know. But innovative, no doubt about it. And look at that.
Live with Regis and Kathy Lee.
Okay, gotcha. Live, that's right. And that was a pretty dang popular show, of course. And she would often talk about her exploits with her husband, the former New York Giant, I believe, right? Frank Gifford. Was a kicker? Is that right? Seems like it. But, man, him and Dandy Don Meredith and Howard Cosell, what a trio that was, calling the Monday night football games. Always a lot of fun. I think my favorite part when I was growing up would be the halftime highlights of the prior day's games. The big Sunday NFL games, of course, and they would do a little feature on little clips and overview of each game, kind of report what happened the day before. At halftime, they'd play that. It's pretty cool. So, Bill Rasmussen, dead at 93, founded ESPN. Talking earlier about the president's net worth increasing by $2 billion over the last couple of years. You know, his administration is staffed with some stout individuals as well from a financial perspective. 57 Trump officials worth at least $100 million, including 17 ambassadors and the remaining 40 in various posts across the executive branch. Look in the cabinet. 8 of its 23 members are worth more than $100 million. That includes Treasury Secretary Howard Lutnick, Education Secretary Linda McMahon. Now, some people may have a problem with this. I actually like it, and here's why. These are people that don't need money. They're not looking for ways to use their status, their power, their position for more financial gain. Deputy Secretary of Defense Stephen Feinberg, Small Business Administration Administrator Kelly Loeffler, billionaires, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff, both worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, just to compare to George W. Bush's administration and Joe Biden's administration, each of those included 5 members worth $100 million or more. The President Barack Obama's administration included 3 members. So I'm perfectly cool with that, but I suspect that will, now that this has kind of been reported on, it wouldn't shock to see Democrats pounce on that as part of their messaging going into the midterms. All eyes today on Florida. Primaries going on down there. You got a couple of incumbent Democrats that are facing stiff challenges from Democrat Socialist of America's endorsed candidates. Rhino, what's the deal with eliminating the U.S. Senate? What are they so cruel? I know we got a break. We can pick it up on the other side. What's the obsession with that? Coming right back.
From the Seabrook
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Just as I thought it was going all right, I found out I'm wrong when I thought it was right. It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. I could say day and you'd say night. Tell me it's black when I know that it's white. Always the same, it's just a shame, and that's all. I could leave, but I won't go. Though my heart might tell me so. I can't feel a thing.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Appreciate you joining us. Yeah, so Frank Gifford, I was mistaken. He was a flanker halfback. I was thinking about Pat Sumrall, longtime anchor, NFL football anchor, was a place kicker with the New York Giants. So, and turns out Frank Gifford played for the Giants as well, though a wide receiver and a halfback, back when we had halfbacks in those days. Yeah, Larry Amaya says that was a running back, and Charlie Connerly played with him at quarterback. Got it. Yep. I was thinking about Pat Sumrall. Somebody on the C Spire text line, $100 million today is not what it used to be, talking about all those worth more than $100 million serving in the Trump administration. 57 to be exact. 5 each under Biden and George W. Bush. 3 in the Obama administration. Don't be surprised if the Democrats don't pounce on that and include that in their messaging. It's Trump and all his rich friends. They'll go crazy. Do you want unsuccessful people in those positions? Isn't there something to be said for a person who's achieved some success, which is reflected in their balance sheet? I don't know. I think that's a good thing. We were talking before we went to break about the abolition of the United States Senate that is being called for. It's like a top level plank in the platform of the Democrat socialists. And you made the point to me on the break, right, that they just don't like the idea that the states have equal representation in that chamber, even though their population isn't equal. For example, our state has fewer than 3 million people. That's less than 1% of the nation's population, but we got 2 people in the U.S. Senate. So does California, our most populous state, at about 40 million. They have 2 as well. That's the design. But what do they got? Like
they're against that design.
I get
principle.
It. But there's 55 in the House from California. We have 4.
But they are under the belief that the Senate, as it was designed, was a way for, quote-unquote, wealthy property owners, end quote, to put up a check against, quote, popular democracy and working-class power, end quote.
Okay, I got you. California down to 52, by the way, because they lost a little population. 52, though, reps. Well, this is also consistent with, I guess,
it's consistent with the stupidity of people that never learned in history class the difference between a democracy and a republic.
That's true. I would agree with that.
They are convinced that the United States government should be purely democratic to the point that it should have a unicameral Congress that is proportional to the population, and that Congress should then decide who sits in the executive branch and who sits on the judiciary, because then it would be truly democratic.
Thereby eliminating the need for a second
thereby eliminating
chamber.
The whole purpose of being a republic.
Correct. So this idea
because everybody you see walking around publicly proclaiming to be a Democrat socialist is literally the stupidest person you would be unfortunate enough to talk to on that day.
Shame. I did see a report that the majority of people in this country under 30 could get on board with electing a Democrat socialist president. Where did we drop the ball here? Under 30 They want a Democrat socialist.
We dropped the ball when we let the eco-terrorists of the left in the 70s take over academia.
And they dominated. They absolutely dominated. Agree. And it's just they're in their little cushy little bubble, insulated from the real world, honestly. Drawing handsome pay, pretty much doing what they want, spouting their nonsense in front of young, impressionable people, and they're turning out obedient little socialists. Yeah, until they have to start paying taxes. Then they change their attitude a bit. But it is concerning. It is disturbing that so many are pro-socialist. On the C-Spire text line, unfortunately, the DSA understands how the Senate is supposed to work more than the average voter. That from JD and Eudora. You could be right. Mo says, Gerard, why get rid of the Senate? The Senate was originally intended to protect states' rights. Under socialism, the states and individuals have to voice. They are subservient to the ruling power. I think it's the same rationale, is it not, Rhino, for eliminating the Electoral College, which is supported by even mainstream Democrats. Not Democrats. Socialists that doesn't even figure into their model because they want this unicameral body, right, to appoint a CEO of the country, essentially, and then the judiciary with no Senate. So that we wouldn't elect the president, so that's not even relevant. But there are Democrats that don't define themselves as Democrat socialists and don't align with their policy positions that have expressed an interest in ending the Electoral College and electing our president strictly by popular vote. Kamala Harris recently came out. She looks like she's going to be on the ballot again. And in the few polls I've seen of potential Democrat candidates, she falls at the bottom. However,
she's always been at the bottom of candidate lists.
It's true, but that hasn't stopped her. But you know, Alexandria Ocasio,
she's a deeply unimpressive person.
She is. Ocasio-Cortez, she seems to poll on the top of the list whenever these polls are conducted. That's kind of scary, in my view. But she seems to be leading the pack, at least right now in the polls, even over Gavin Newsom. Did you see the quaint little restaurant discussion she and Big Gretch had for a podcast, I think, right, from some restaurant somewhere. Did he fly to her, I think, to Michigan? I don't know. Oh, aren't they
something? That slime ball.
Aren't they something?
That dude is scum of the earth.
He really is.
Wouldn't whiz on him if I just drank a gallon of gasoline and he was on fire.
Got it. Most corrected me. There was a typo in his text. Under socialism, the states and individuals have no voice. Yeah, I agree. But, you know, they don't care, though. That's the problem. All they care about is the cost of groceries is elevated, the cost of gas is high, I can't afford to buy a house, I want change. It really is what they think about. They don't think about it being socialism versus capitalism or what made this country the wealthiest, the most opportunistic, the most free. They don't think about that. Rather, it's just, I want this and I want it now, and I can't achieve it under the current government and those in charge, so I want to change. Throw them all out, bring new people in. That's just literally how short-sighted they are.
It's almost like there was some wisdom in the Founding Fathers restricting the right to vote.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that lately, more than maybe I've ever heard, is who really ought to be able to vote.
Because with social media's prevalence, people are being exposed to the sheer level of stupidity that surrounds them on a daily basis.
It's true. You're right. We do see it more regularly than you kind of had to look for it a little bit, or just be at the right place at the right time. Now it's in your face all the time. I would agree. Tim and McGee says, aren't people seeing what's happening in New York and they still want a socialist president? Yeah, old Mondami, he's kind of fallen out of favor somewhat. Who is it that supported him and is now all mad about the pied-à-terre tax? It's just hitting him square in the mouth. And it's an actor, I think, that lives there, if I'm not mistaken. Is it Duvall or somebody like that? I don't know. But, yeah, he's getting a lot of backlash on that. But that's their model. That's their plan. That's their solution to everything is just let's go get more money from them people and give it to those people. I'll skim a little bit off the top, take care of my cronies, and everything's good to go. That literally is their system. And any ideas, any thoughts about policies or standards or rules, or which there shouldn't be as many of, or regulations that might stimulate economic growth to give people more opportunity? Nope, can't even talk about that. Absolutely can't talk about that. It's just, you got it, they don't, you give some to them. And I'll determine how much in the time and place. Coming right back, final segment.
Lots of
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back in the Element Wealth studio. So you were telling me on the break about ICE being present in Mississippi. Where and what's going on?
Yeah, this all started when Boston Mayor Michelle Wu filed a Freedom of Information Act request to find out which property owners in Boston were responding to ICE's request to lease parking spots. And a list came out of various municipalities that have had different businesses within the municipality leasing parking spots to ICE, including Inglewood, Colorado, Dallas, Texas, Bakersfield, California, Roswell, New Mexico, Las Vegas, Nevada, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, St. Louis. The list continues. But as the list scrolled, I was like, hold up. One of these things is not like the others. Oxford, Mississippi is on the list of municipalities who have had businesses lease out parking spaces to ICE. Apparently, Oxford has 14 parking spaces leased to ICE. And after seeing that, did a little digging. Apparently, there was a report a week or two ago now on what they were calling Operation Muddy Waters, which was a joint investigation between ICE, Homeland Security, federal, state, and local law enforcement partners. It was a 2-week-long statewide enforcement effort that resulted in the arrests of 70 individuals for offenses connected to child exploitation, solicitation of children, possession or distribution of child sexual abuse material, and violations involving previously convicted sex offenders.
Interesting. So, working right here in the great state of Mississippi.
Yeah, the Operation Muddy Waters collared illegal aliens that were believed to have traveled across state lines to have sexual relations with children. It also included a few Mississippians, like one is a guy from Pearl who was arrested for establishing communication with a 14-year-old boy via social media to have sex. Another was a dude from Mendenhall who established communication with a 14-year-old girl via social media, sent videos of himself pleasuring himself, and requested nudes from the 14-year-old girl.
Man, that's incredible. Well, Sounds like that there's some work to be done here in the Magnolia State on this particular issue. And this is something, of course, that you hear regularly from Democrat political candidates, is that they want to abolish the agency, ICE. Really incredible that that's even going on in this country. It's a problem that needs to be addressed, the illegal immigration, and I think ICE is doing its job, essentially, that they're appointed to do by law. We just have evolved to this point where there are many in this country that just believe we shouldn't have any borders. I guess just cede our sovereignty. And that's insane. You might as well not have a country. Have they not witnessed what's been going on elsewhere in the world?
No, that's the problem, is they witness it and they believe it is a good thing.
That's unbelievable. Well, I
never said they were smart on the left.
Yeah. I support legal immigration when it makes sense, but I think that should also be done within some reasonable parameters and constraints. Legal immigration, I think that's been a positive through the years for the country, but illegal immigration is a no-go.
When you literally have millions upon millions of people living, eating, and existing in the country where they should not be, if you understand even the simplest terms of supply and demand, you would understand why everything seems to be so dang expensive. Well, there's literally 100 million people adding to the demand that shouldn't freaking be here.
Yeah, agree. Yes, Thomas, there are some legal immigrants that have contributed mightily to this society and to the world. Surely you get that. I know you're totally obsessed with that. I mean, it's like the bane of your existence. I can only assume that you are facing a significant threat of someone immigrating into this country legally and taking your job and doing it for less money, which keeps costs down to those of us who are consumers. I know there are people, Rhino, in the state of Mississippi who say that are certain jobs they simply can't get Americans to do. And some of those are in the agricultural industry. This is something that's got to be addressed. Finally, on that subject, I have got to give a shout-out to Governor Greg Abbott of the great state of Texas. He has forced the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport to cancel its plans to install a facility used for Islamic prayer and feet washing. Can't do that. Out of here today, back tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.